Now, the funny thing about our human nature is this tendency to want it all, right? You recognise that? The part of the self that just wants to finally be there, to finally resolve the whole thing. There's an impatience. And so there's the tendency to want to bite off more than one can chew, the tendency to want to leap further than where one truly is. So what I would recommend is that you understand the nature of this behaviour, that having been associated for so long with the story of who you think you are, what you think life is to understand that it's been consuming a very large space of what you think you are. So rather than trying to get immediately to the all large space of stillness and silence, let yourself pay attention to the small openings between those stories. So, for example, you would recognise in your life that there have been periods where perhaps for days, weeks or months or years you are stuck in a particular story or a series of stories, right? And you're aware of that at some level, otherwise you wouldn't be sitting here. And you would have noticed that in your journey. You would have already reflected upon that. Typically, the dominant attention, though, is still given to the story and wanting to cast out the story. Now, if you were to begin with instead paying attention to the pause, the space between those great big cycles of story, and let yourself rest at that point, you will begin cultivating a seat of stillness. And so if you start from that larger perspective, you can gradually come in and in and in from the big cycle of the story, which perhaps you're stuck in for days or weeks or months. You come down then into the points of the paragraphs in the stories, really bringing your highlight of awareness into the space between all of the paragraphs of the stories. And from there you come down to the points of space between the sentences of the stories. And from there you come down to the points of space between the words within the sentences, the images, the sounds of the story. And from there you come down to the pause and the silence of where the sound of the story even arises from. So that it is a gentle journey of entering in. It is a progressive journey of entering in, rather than an attempt for a giant leap. And there may be moments where you do come really deeply into that all stillness, the pause, the gap between all thoughts. But at least if you can embrace this notion that in your life, when you do catch yourself being really caught up for days or even for hours, that at least you can bring yourself to that point of attention that notices the space between those chapters of the stories, or your whole book. How many of you are still carting around a book?